Hey everyone, welcome back to another Theory Thursday. Today we have an interesting episode. What I have here is a very brief, very condensed summary of the history of music and music theory. So it's 2 pages here, and it's I've got this separated into 9 eras, 9 sections. And so you can imagine that this is very condensed, very brief, because each arrow only has about a paragraph. Most of this information is from the schoolofcomposition.com. They have this really, really well organized and thought out timeline of the history of music, and it's fantastic. So a lot of this information is straight from there. So if you are curious about this and want to know more about where I got my info and all of this, all these facts and everything, it's schoolofcomposition.com. They have a fantastic site. So most of that's coming from here, and this is a condensed version of that. They have much more detail, and they go in depth a lot farther. Anyway, so that's what we're doing today. It's just going to basically be a big story. I don't have a tie on today. I have my Mickey Mouse watch on today. And that's what's going on. So, almost dropped my coffee. Without further ado, history of music. Let's go. All right, so I'm just going to start at the top and go through these 9 sections here, and I'll tell you too in terms of what year we're talking about here. So to start off, we're calling this the prehistoric era, and they have this listed 2 million to 40,000 years ago. Now this is where I went outside of their website, and what I found was that fossils and DNA suggest people looking like us evolved around 300,000 years ago. And even then, it was not until 50 to 65,000 years ago that complex technology started to arise, like tools and cave art, stuff like that. So the 2 million is a big stretch. We're kind of mostly looking at the 300,000 up to about 40,000 years ago. So what we have here is humans likely began experimenting with music alongside the development of language, using their voices for singing, humming, and whistling. Percussive sounds from clapping, stomping, and beating objects were likely early musical expressions. The first known musical instruments, such as a 60,000-year-old flute found in Slovenia, which we've actually talked about on this channel before, suggests that music had a significant role in early human society, accompanying rituals and social events. So right off the bat, we're looking at music in a societal role that's not just entertainment based. They say rituals, social events. It's stuff that in today's age you think of, well, I would just want to listen to music on the car ride. I want to listen to music just to cure my boredom. But that's not, even today, that's not all music is used for. And sometimes I need to be ripped out of that mindset. It's like a gnat flying around here. Just to realize there's a lot more uses for music. Okay, so that was up to about 40,000 years ago. Now, next summary here, the ancient world, and this is from 40,000 years ago all the way up to the 5th century. That's year 400. As societies formed, music evolved, influenced by various cultures. Ancient Greece was pivotal, and you can't understate that. Or you can't overstate that. Ancient Greece was pivotal, developing foundational concepts in music theory, such as scales and notation. Some of that stuff we still use to this day. Pythagoras explored the mathematical basis of music, while others like Plato and Aristotle examined its psychological impacts. So it's hard to believe that back in the year 400, these ideas and concepts that we use today were being developed so long ago. The way Pythagoras, and we'll do another video on him separately, but all his mathematical calculations and all of that is still the foundation of how we view musical notes, pitches, and frequencies, and how we measure it, why they sound good together. It all stems from Pythagoras' research. So it's pretty fascinating. It dates back this far. In ancient Egypt, musical instruments and depictions in art indicate a structured musical practice. Chinese music theory intertwined with philosophical ideas emphasizing harmony and balance, while the Arab world, influenced by Greek and Persian traditions, made significant theoretical contributions. In India, the Natya Shastra detailed a sophisticated musical system based on ragas and talas. All right, so this is happening all over the world, different cultures evolving their own music, and of course they're influenced by each other if they're in a geographic location where that's possible, right? Where this is still the time period where someone in Native America isn't going to be talking to someone in, what is Germany today. It's just not possible. So let's keep going. Now we're into the Middle Ages, and this is the 5th century to the 13th century. That's about year 400 up to 1200, so a big span of time here. Music in the Middle Ages was dominated by the church, the monophonic Gregorian chants being central. So monophonic, remember, is when there's just one note. You can have multiple people singing it, but it's just one line of music, right? There's no harmony. There's no polyphony, which comes later. That word's going to pop up, I'm sure. That's what we're talking about, monophonic Gregorian chants. The period saw the beginning of musical notation as we know it today and the development of polyphony, starting with organum. Instrumental music also advanced, with the refinement of various instruments leading to richer and more complex musical landscape. Okay, big steps in the Middle Ages. Now we're on to the Renaissance, which is about 1200, 1300, all the way up to 1600. They have 14th century to 17th century listed here. The Renaissance brought a revival of ancient Greek music theory, influencing harmony and modes. So this is what we're talking about from the ancient world, how they discovered these different musical modes, how when we still use some of the names, Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, that's all Greek. The era saw the development of polyphony, with composers like Palestrina mastering intricate vocal interplay. The period also witnessed the rise of opera, driven by the desire to recreate Greek theatrical music. Equal temperament tuning gained prominence, reflecting a broader cultural emphasis on proportion and symmetry. Now, this equal temperament tuning is directly related to Pythagoras' research in terms of frequency, ratios. It's all mathematical. It's really cool how they came up with all of this. And like I said earlier, you can't overstate the impact the Greeks had. You see here in the Renaissance that they're trying to recreate Greek theatrical music, 1,000 years later, when the Greeks were just coming up with the modes and all their research. Just how big of an impact they had on the arts, still to this day. Incredible. And we'll continue into the Baroque period, which is about 1600 to about 1750. I should also say these aren't hard cutoffs. Of course, culture and politics, and there's no, okay, this is the year it all ended and we switched over to this era. That's not how it works. That's not how it works today. It's not how it worked a long time ago. So these are just aggregate years, really. Around this time is when things started shifting. Okay, Baroque period, 1600 to 1750. The Baroque era introduced bass continuo. I don't think we've talked about that on this channel yet, but we might. which provided a harmonic framework for composers. The period saw the solidification of the major-minor tonal system and advances in rhythm and meter. The era was marked by the popularity of opera, oratorio, concerto, and sonata, with a focus on narrative-driven music. Virtuosity and technical skill in performance became more prominent. Okay, moving on. The classical era, 1750 to about 1820. The classical era emphasized balanced forms and the crystallization of tonal principles. So things are starting to get set in stone here, right? Rules are being written that, of course, we can break. But things are, we at least have a set of principles. Harmonic progressions became more predictable, and composers focused on singable and balanced melodic phrases, no doubt because of the listeners. Of course, they wanted to hear things that, would be an earworm. We still deal with that today. Arguably too much, right? Instead of musicians making art for art's sake, they make it for money's sake. And what's the fastest way to make money is, well, what's the formula, right? This whole thing has become a formula with the big record labels. It's really fascinating information and work that got put into all this, but I digress. The period saw the standardization of dynamics and expression markings and the emergence of new forms like the symphony and string quartet. The forte piano gained prominence, influencing keyboard writing and leading to innovations in piano technique. And we keep going. The Romantic era, 19th century to early 20th century, so about 1800 to the early 1900s. The Romantic era embraced individualism and emotional expression, expanding tonality with rich harmonic progressions and chromaticism. Melodic lines became more expressive and free-flowing forms were favored. Program music, which told a story or evoked a mood, became popular. The era saw a variety of compositions, with short piano pieces to epic symphonies reflecting diverse influences, including nationalism and exoticism. Sorry. I just wanted to say one thing about the program music, which the whole point was telling a story and to evoke emotion. Now that go back another 1,000 years and we're talking about songs that were written for the narrative, right? So everything's a circle, right? This culture shock coming back into, well, let's work less on the formula singable and focus more on the, well, what's the story this thing's telling, right? So it's really cool to see these things rise and fall in popularity and just what the society wants at the time, right? So we'll keep going. The modern era is what it's called, which is, you can pretty much just think of it as the 20th century. The 20th century saw a departure from tonal traditions, with composers like Schoenberg exploring serialism and others like Debussy embracing new harmonic languages. Rhythmic innovations and the advent of electronic music expanded the theoretical landscape. Reactions to strict serialism included minimalism and chance music, highlighting diverse approaches to composition. Now, when they say it's a departure from tonal traditions, they are not joking. Go look up Schoenberg, or a composer that really represents modern era music is John Cage. Just go look up John Cage, and his whole thing was a question to the world: what is music? So he's got this famous piece, 4 minutes and 33 seconds. It's just someone sitting at a piano, and the music, quote unquote, is supposed to be the ambiance in the auditorium, right? Someone sneezes over here, someone coughs over there. That's the music, right? So that's his whole thing. And chance music and serialism, this is where things start becoming a much more mathematical. So like I was talking about, it's these rises and falls of these societal norms, what the listeners want, and how far these artists are willing to push the envelope. These genres are, some of them are completely mathematical, like the chance music, rolling dice to find out what your next note is, right? 12-tone music, having to play all 12 tones in Western music before you can repeat another one, right? That's the kind of stuff that was emerging at this time. Now, it's not to say that other music isn't being played throughout any of these periods, but this is the new stuff that's coming out. New. Everything's cyclical. Postmodern era, late 20th century to present. So we're looking at about the 1950s to now. Postmodern music is characterized by eclecticism, blending diverse genres and traditions. Film music evolves with the integration of electronic elements and unconventional structures. New musical styles, including rock, metal, pop, hip-hop, and electronic dance music, EDM, reshaped the global musical landscape, reflecting the diverse and interconnected nature of contemporary music. The most recent significant development is music created by artificial intelligence, AI. While composers are still far from redundant, AI and its effects are yet to be seen. ... To be continued. Really, this is where everything blows up, right? The invention of the internet. All of a sudden, everyone's connected. And instead of hearing new music, or of course, the radio came before that. That's really where this starts. And before that, to hear new music, you have to go out and listen to it. And of course, for your area, your geographical area, to hear any music, those musicians, whatever band you had, whatever symphony you had to have the music. So is the music from China being played in America before, right? There was an easy way to communicate? Probably not. So you get the radio. Internet makes it unbelievably easy to get music. I say get because a lot of the times it wasn't purchased, right? Then that's a whole other thing with this music thing, right? How do you make money on this thing when there are so many things changing? So that's the very short, very brief, very condensed version of the history of music. There are a couple things that I pointed out there. Of course, there's thousands and thousands of important words and descriptions, and that we completely glossed over, right? So like I said, very condensed, very brief, but a fun story nonetheless. So that's all I have. I think that was enough information for you today. As always, if you've been enjoying these, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you for the next one. Thanks. Bye.